Off we go on Free Agency Monday. What's up? What's happening? Welcome into the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, a show that if you're watching live on YouTube, you'll probably see me looking up over yonder quite a bit today as we keep an eye on our televisions and the things that keep coming in, the news that keeps coming in. Latest, Packers just made a deal with former Giant safety Xavier McKinney, 4-year, $68 million. We will go through a full rundown, as full as we can. It's an ever-evolving list of signings as we go here. But we start with the Commanders and two really solid signings that I think very much fit the model I expected them to take into free agency. Now, there's a lot more work to do, but the Commanders have agreed to terms with whatever are going to sign. It's the legal tampering period. Nothing's official yet. It'll all become official on Wednesday, but we're just going to say they were signing. Tyler Biadasz, center, who was with the Cowboys recently. He's only 26. He has a tremendously high pass rush win rate. Of course, is a center that has a lot to do with who your guards are, and he had a very good unit around him in Dallas. But he didn't give up a lot of pressure. Younger guy. I was talking to one of my buddies down in Dallas. He said he's pretty scrappy, doesn't talk to the media a lot, kind of your classic roughneck offensive lineman who is going to now be the center of a unit that I think is being anchored by a veteran is a good thing. So I'll circle back to that in a moment. Dorance Armstrong is the other signing. Versatile edge player, pass rusher, can play first and second down, can play for you on third down. Maybe not the most juice as a pass rusher, but if he was a Commander and put up the sack numbers he did last year, he would have led the team in sacks. He had 7.5. 2 years ago, he had 8.5, which is more than any other edge player had for Washington that year. Of course, that was the year Deron Payne at 11, a double-digit guy on the interior, but he's got more juice or more success getting to the quarterback, I should say, than anybody here in recent memory. Of course, getting to play alongside Michael Parsons tends to help things. Getting to play alongside Tank Lawrence tends to help things. But a guy who's got some pass rush juice inside and outside. But I think what you're getting is guys that obviously Dan Quinn is familiar with, guys that Dan Quinn has a lot of respect for. And in some ways it continues the Zach Ertz trend, which is we need solid vets in these rooms who are going to be our types of guys, who are going to say, this is the way we do things. This is how DQ wants it. This is how Cliff wants it. And I think even more so than Ertz, this is about also play on the field. These are guys that are legitimate NFL starters. Are they the best at their position in the league? No. Are they amazing players? No, I wouldn't even go that far. But they're very solid. And it comes at a position at pass rusher where you had no starters in an ideal world, and center where you really needed to upgrade. So let me just go ahead and double click on Biadasz as a center. I have kind of been in the camp all off season long that I thought Ricky Stromberg needed to start at center next season. Simple reason. He's your third-round pick last year. You don't spend third-round picks on guys, especially at the interior offensive line, who aren't starters. However, the equation changes when you have a rookie quarterback probably starting for you in 2024. And so having a 2024 rookie, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, J.J. McCarthy, whoever it is, under center means you do not want to put quite as much pass blocking responsibilities, run targeting as well, super important, on them. And if you can get into an offense where your center takes care of that stuff, or can at the very least double check it, and then maybe your quarterback's doing it, but the center's like, yep, no, we're good. Or going, no, like that's the mic, we're going this way. We're gonna lucky this. Instead of Ringo it, we're going to the left, not the right. Whatever your line calls are, however much flexibility Cliff Kingsbury gives within his offense, having a vet who's seen a bunch of stuff is a really helpful piece to have. Stromberg has played 0 NFL games at center. He's played some at guard. I don't know that I'd say they've moved him to guard. He played guard last year. If you're going to be a backup offensive lineman, you need to have position flex. I know that term is hated around here because they seem to find a bunch of guys who had more position flex than an actual position they could play. They were just actually not very good at all the positions that they lined these guys up at. But having position flex on the interior of the offensive line is essential. You got to be able to play both guard spots. You probably should be able to play some center, or you got to be able to play tackle and guard. And Stromberg is a third rounder. I think gives them an option at left guard. If you want to say he's your backup center and he's going to compete for your left guard spot, opposite of Sam Cosmi, fine. He's your backup. He's your number one backup for all of those spots. So he's one of your 7-0 linemen active on game day that you know if your left guard, your right guard, or your center goes down, or your 8 linemen active on game day, however you want to do it. Point is, left guard goes down, hey, Ricky Stromberg, you're up. Center goes down, Stromberg, you're up. Right guard goes down, Stromberg, you're up. Fine. Like that's an okay use of a guy in year 2 after taking him in the 3rd round as an interior offensive lineman. But the most important thing is making sure that you have what you need for your young quarterback, whoever that is, and getting a veteran center is a huge, huge box checked for the Washington Commanders getting Tyler Biadasz today, who's one of the better guys on the market. I think the Titans got the guy who most people consider the number 1, Lloyd Cushenberry, but they ultimately get one of the next best guys in Tyler Biadasz and do it for, solid money, $10 million a year for centers. Like, that's real. And 3 years, $30 million is the price here. But for a guy who's only 26, for a guy who's got a lot of experience, for a guy who Dan Quinn knows and trusts, and it's got a little bit of a nasty streak, like, that's the kind of attitude you want. Him, Cosmi, Wiley on that offensive line, and we'll see where Wiley ultimately winds up being, but he'll be the vet in the room for sure. And then, obviously, they need to make a move at left tackle, probably in free agency and the draft. And the tackle market has actually gotten bigger today, not smaller, as the Packers have cut longtime veteran David Bakhtiari, and there's a couple of other guys who have been cut as well. So as we go, we'll keep you updated not only on the signings that happen, but kind of as the market sets, if guys get cut, who's available. We'll do kind of a full market reset later on in the show. We'll also be joined by Michael Phillips at 5 o'clock and Logan Paulsen for a Take Command live, if you will, at 6 o'clock. So Logan live at 6, not a Take Command snippet, a real actual Logan Paulsen live appearance, 6 o'clock here on the Team 980. Also a good day to remind you that you can listen to us in so many ways. So if you are driving home right now and you're like, damn, I really would like to be able to listen to Hoffman's coverage, to Logan later, to Phillips of free agency day. That's how I want to be kept in the loop. You got options. The free Odyssey app is available on your smart device. You can also listen at theteam980.com to the audio stream. You can even tell your Alexa, hey, Alexa, play the Team 980. So if that's an option for you in your house, then great. You also can watch us. We stream live on YouTube. I know I say this all the time, but it really is super easy. And almost every TV that you have at this point is a smart TV, whether you made it one with an Apple TV or it came that way with an internal Roku or Samsung or whatever. Just download the YouTube app, which you probably already have on said smart TV. Search the Team 980, and we'll pop up. And you just hit that, and we look like a TV show. So you can watch NFL Live. You can watch all the national stuff that isn't going to talk about the Commanders or the impact of these moves on the Commanders, or you can watch us. So pick your poison, and it's actually not poison. It's like candy, NFL free agent day, and we'll keep you in the loop for the next 2.5 hours at this point until 6:45 when we go off the air tonight. Good day to listen to it all. We're live here on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. All right, time to get you caught up on what's going on around the NFL because the news continues to flow, and you know it will as the day continues to go here on the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And, for that big sales pitch I did, Anthony, for the YouTube stream at the end of the last segment, a lot of people didn't need it. Stream's popping today. So comment section, I'm sure, will come alive here. Already some thoughts on, for instance, what the Eagles have done. Although the Eagles did just miss out on one of their big targets. Xavier McKinney was definitely someone they wanted to finally fix that safety spot, which they haven't really, they obviously had it right a couple years ago. They went to the Super Bowl. C.J. Gardner-Johnson leaves for the Lions. They tried to fill it with Kevin Byard middle of the year last year. Didn't really work. They went after Xavier McKinney, but ultimately McKinney leaves the NFC East instead of staying in it and goes to the Packers. Also, just another move in the division. This one more recent than it is big, but this is a guy that perhaps I think the Commanders could have looked at. Devin Singletary, running back, most recently in Buffalo, has been there for a while. In fact, I think he's actually been there his whole career. Not anymore. Maintains his colors and reunited with his old offensive coordinator, Brian Dable. He's going to the New York Giants on a 3-year deal. Biggest moves of the day, newsworthiness-wise, I would say go like this, Anthony. I would say, obviously, Cousins is the big one. Kirk Cousins to Atlanta, 4 years, $180 million. It's really like 2 years, $100 million. And then Atlanta will have some options. Cousins, 36 years old, coming off the Achilles. We'll circle back to this one and talk about it more in just a second because there's huge ramifications across the league, and I think Atlanta becomes instantly the favorite in the NFC South, which, when they're going to play games is actually a relevant part of this whole thing. Russell Wilson of Pittsburgh, that's a veteran minimum deal because any dollar amount that he's signed for would just come out of the total number he gets this year. Like, he's going to get what the Broncos are paying him. And so now the Steelers only pay the vet minimum amount of that, and the Broncos pay the rest. So if he had signed for $10 million in Pittsburgh, he doesn't get the Broncos money and $10 more million, which would have cost the Steelers $10 million. So that's a pretty good deal for the Steelers because, they get a good quarterback who had 26 touchdowns and 8 interceptions in 15 games last year for a very small amount of money, although it is an awkward fit. Again, I want to circle back to quarterbacks in a second. Philly does make some huge splashes. Saquon Barkley, 3-year deal gets real money. The running back position kind of having its comeuppance this year. Not its comeuppance. That means it would be it's like reverse comeuppance. Instead of it being bad, it's the good version. It's coming around on the market side this year. So Barkley to Philadelphia, Bryce Huff to Philadelphia as well, one of the best pass rushers on the market, which makes you then wonder, what are they going to do with Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat? Both guys are potentially on the trade block, but I also don't know if a team like Washington is going to give something up for those guys at the cost. Christian Wilkins signs one of the biggest deals of the day, $100 million deal basically to go to Las Vegas, the former Dolphins defensive tackle headed to the Raiders. Andrew Van Ginkel also leaving Miami. He goes to Minnesota. Minnesota has signed a couple of defensive guys today. The money that they're not giving Cousins kind of being invested on that side of the ball. Any other really big deals, Anthony, that we should mention for folks before we dive into some of the analysis here?
I would probably say the Robert Hunt deal.
Yeah, 5 years, $100 million
Yep.
for the guard to go to Carolina from Miami. Whew. Guards are getting paid.
And then the other one, I would just say Jonathan Grenard.
Yeah,
the Vikings.
He also goes to the Vikings. So you got two. Maybe those are your starters. This is Van Ginkel and Grenard.
Yep.
Van Ginkel played under Flores in Miami when Flores was the head coach down there. So he's obviously the DC up in Minnesota. And after, I think, a couple of years of them being pretty underwhelming on the personnel side, they are finally getting some dudes for him up in Minnesota. And then we'll see. What they do at quarterback is obviously going to become pretty significant. So, I think that the Cousins to Atlanta deal is a great fit. They're going to want to run a Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay style offense. The OC down there is the former Rams quarterback coach. You obviously have Bijan, you have Kyle Pitts, and you have Drake London. So you have these great vertical threats. You have a ton of team speed. They're going to run, they're still going to run a ton of play action. It's going to look different, obviously, than what they did under Arthur Smith. But, I mean, if they can get Kyle Pitts doing some of the stuff that, like, Jordan Reed used to do here, Vernon Davis used to do here, some of what Kittle's route tree is. Now, he's been more of a vertical guy than a horizontal guy, but, like, think of some of the monster tight end years that have been put up in this offense. All of a sudden, Kirk Cousins, obviously the quarterback for Jordan Reed's best years here in D.C., that is a hell of a fit for them down there. If they can get the defensive side of the ball figured out, which they had some good pieces. They added Jesse Bates, obviously, last year in free agency, as well as a couple other guys. All of a sudden, that is a goon squad down there for Raheem Morris in Atlanta. That was a team that felt very ready-made to win. Obviously, Ra's specialties on the defensive side of the ball. So from a coaching upgrade standpoint and a personnel upgrade standpoint, if they can add a few more pieces, that is an enormous move, and I think immediately vaults Atlanta to the top of the NFC South. Not hard to vault yourself over Carolina, who still stinks. Not hard to vault yourself over New Orleans, which just feels like a team that's kind of stuck in the middle. They're not bad enough to be bad. They're not good enough to be good. And then we'll see if Baker can who obviously re-signed over the weekend, 3 years, $100 million, if he can have another really good one. And obviously Mike Evans re-signs, and they'll be competitive. But I think and Atlanta is definitively now the best team in the NFC South if Cousins comes back and plays well. Nevertheless, if he can come back and play at the level that he did before he popped his Achilles last year, because that dude was playing like a top 10 quarterback in the league before he got hurt for whatever that 6-7 games was.
Yeah, they were literally just quarterback or good quarterback play away from really making some noise last year. They had games that they lost on the goal line,
including
inches.
to Washington.
Yeah.
Or like they could just score a touchdown instead of Desmond Ridder throwing the ball to Benjamin St. Juste for his only career interception.
Exactly. So I think Kirk to Atlanta is definitely going to pay huge dividends. I think we're going to hear more about Drake London. I think Atlanta's, their woes have like overshadowed his production down there. And then I definitely think Kyle Pitts is definitely going to have a bigger role in the offense. And we're going to see his numbers skyrocket because, again, Kirk Cousins loves his tight end. He loves, that is his security blanket. He had T.J. Hawkinson last year.
Yep. Irv Smith the year before.
Exactly.
Had some pretty good years with Kirk there.
He's going to lean on Kyle Pitts. And then Bijan is Bijan. Like, we don't really have to say too much.
Yeah, no doubt. By the way, latest deal, Gus Edwards agrees to a 2-year deal with the Chargers per ESPN's Adam Schefter and undoubtedly NFL Network's Ian Rappaport. But yeah, Gus Edwards, super power back from the Ravens, will now smash people while wearing powder blues. The other thing that I think this does for Atlanta, which I think is relevant to Washington, is this frees them up at 8. That was a team that I definitely had circled as a potential trade-up team, because that's the kind of team that Washington, if they wanted to trade back but stay in the top 10, that's a good target. Eight's a good one. But instead, they now can take Dallas Turner or whoever the best player is on the board. And, if these top 3 picks wind up being quarterbacks and the next 3 wind up being wide receivers, Atlanta doesn't need either of those positions. So they're getting the best player in the draft at almost any other position minus whoever goes at 7. So that could be Joe Alt or Talisi Fuaga or Olufashanu, whatever tackle they think is best. Probably going to be there unless it's Alt and he goes at 7, right? But if Alt goes at 7, then you can solve your pass rush issue, which they definitely have had forever. And they've had a couple guys over the years, but really they've never been able to figure that out. And maybe Dallas Turner's their guy at the edge out of Alabama, or maybe they like someone else. So they are set up very, very well to get what they need. And I think, this window is probably right for them. When they have some of these younger skill position guys on the rookie deals, you pay the quarterback and you feel pretty comfortable with the things that you have elsewhere. So I think Atlanta's doing, a very, very good job down there. They're doing it the right way. I don't know whether it's going to be enough to win a Super Bowl. If Cousins gets super hot in the playoffs, that was always my thing with Kirk. Is he a guy that immediately puts you in Super Bowl contention? No. But could he Flacco you to a Super Bowl where all of a sudden he just puts it together and he plays at a top 5, top 3 level for a month? That month has never been January, but if it is, Atlanta could be a serious contender. I'd probably say they're the favorite to win the NFC East. I think they can win a playoff game or 2, but they're in a very interesting spot, certainly. And I think from the Washington side of it, the fact that I think they probably stay put in the draft is something to kind of check off the list. I realize a lot of you listening are just going like, they're going to take a quarterback at 2. They're not trading back, just painting the entire picture. That is one possibility that I think is off the board. I say we talk about Russ to Pittsburgh next, Anthony. And then we can get into some of what Philly's done. So we'll keep the news coming. We'll keep the reaction coming. I'll take a look at the YouTube chat here in the break as well. Get some of those thoughts in. It's the Hoffman Show. We got to take some calls. 301-230-0980 for agency coverage all day long here on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. NFL free agency underway. The legal tampering period. So again, these are all agreeing to terms. They can actually sign on Wednesday. You'll see nothing from the teams officially until then. Doesn't mean we can't talk about it with you at 301-230-0980 on the Team 980 listener line. Quick thought, real quick though. Anthony, on Russell Wilson to the Steelers. They went 10-7 last year with atrocious quarterback play. They bring in Arthur Smith to replace Matt Canada as the OC. And I am fascinated to see that fit. Because on one hand, if Russell is okay to run, which I don't think he has any aversion to it, and Arthur Smith is like, we're going to do super zone read, take this back to 2012, like we're going to use Russell's legs. We're going to use the fact that he can get out on the edge, not just as a runner, like because he's not the runner he was when he was 24, obviously at age 30, whatever he is. But he can still move, and he can definitely throw on the run. That's always been the baseball in him is strong. The ability to throw as if you are, running to field a grounder, and then you got to make that throw on the move. Like that is super natural to him and has been his entire life. And so the ability to get out on the edge and throw, I think really fits well with what Arthur Smith wants to do. However, something else Arthur Smith's offense asks the quarterback to do a lot, is throw over the middle. And Russell Wilson does that literally less than any other quarterback in the league. I was listening to my guys Robert Mays and Nate Tice on the Athletic Football Show earlier today, listening to their preview episode, which is kind of fun. Highly recommend listening to a free agency preview episode of a podcast as free agency is happening, because you can be like, oh, that's correct. That was wrong. Nope, missed that one. But Russell Wilson, it was like 5.8% of the time last year in Denver, threw over the middle of the field in kind of that intermediate zone. Desmond Ridder for Atlanta and Arthur Smith, 12.6, I think. And that's the lowest number of any of Arthur Smith's quarterbacks in Atlanta. So it's a weird fit. But I also get it. It's no money. I don't know that they were going to get anybody better. And for a team that's got a short window here, with TJ Watt getting older and Casey Hayward getting older, I think it's worth the flyer for them to get someone who's proven himself in big games, someone who has the mobility to run Arthur Smith's offense, and you see if they can figure out a mesh that works between Wilson's skill set and what the ultimate version of what Smith wants is.
Yeah, I mean, I like Russ to Pitt. I think it's perfect for him, to be honest, because when he was successful in Seattle, he had a strong defense behind him. And I think this situation right here sets him up perfectly to, be able to go out there. You could sometimes hand the ball off to Najee, but you can definitely lean on that defense. And the Broncos, they put up 21 points a game last year. So if you're putting up 21 points a game with TJ Watt, Minka on the other side of the ball, I have firm belief that Russ could be the guy to, just get them some wins. Winning at the end of the day is going to carry everything.
Right. So, is this optimal? No. Is it a clear upgrade over Kenny Pickett?
Yeah.
Yeah. And thus, I think, for the money especially, worth it. Worth it for sure there. As opposed to a place like Washington where it's like, no, we're doing more of a long-term thing. Pittsburgh, This is short-term. They are trying to win in the next couple of years, and they're going to see if they can squeeze one more title or at least deep playoff run out of Russell Wilson. 301-230-0980 is the phone number. Let's get some calls in. Any thoughts really on NFL free agency, Commanders or otherwise? Let's go to Big Tony. Tony, what up? How we doing?
Man, look here. I'm the official Pittsburgh Steelers aficionado on this joint. Look here.
I've heard this. I've heard the rumors over the years.
Okay, well, I'm about to break it down to you.
All right, what you got?
They got the running backs. They got the receivers. They got the tight ends. They got this, that, and the other. They got a young. They're all young defense. Now, dude, I told Doc the other day, just give me a top 15, top 20 quarterback. Anything. Craig, they threw 12 touchdown passes last year.
Yeah.
That is Joe Burrow, my man. That's Allen up in Buffalo. That's 1 month worth of work. We threw that for the season. Now, how did Pittsburgh score 16 points? Yeah, I said 16 points. That's what they averaged. And that wasn't even from the offense, because half the time it was, defensive run backs, or, they ran something down there and got them on the 5-yard line, and then they just ran. Dude, Russell is way better than what we got. But here's the one thing. My question was, why didn't they never give Mason a chance? But when Mason came in, he started throwing up 30 points a game after they, cut Matt Canada and,
Yeah.
And then they put Pickett on the bench. But what I'm saying is, dude, I told Doc, I told everybody, I told Sheehan, I'm telling you, give me a top 15 to 20 quarterback. Give me 20 points, 24 points, game over. With the Craig, they were dude, every time I watched the game, it's 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out.
They were
5
awful.
Or 6 possessions.
They were arguably the worst offense in the NFL last year, and they went 10-7 because Mike Tomlin is a wizard. It's ridiculous.
Well, Craig, they weren't totally that damn. I mean, they were awful. I mean, they were god awful. But the rankings might say they weren't. But whatever the rankings say they were, dude, they were god awful.
Oh, I know.
But let me tell you this. Just give me 20, 24 points, game over with the defense, special teams, blocking everything, running everything back. There you go. Yeah, have a good one, baby.
Yeah, have a good one, Tony. I think if you're a Steelers fan, you should feel confident that if you can repeat defensively and special teams wise what you did last year, get even close to it, that you're going to be a playoff team. You're going to be an 11-win team with a chance to really compete in the playoffs, because Russ has been there before, and they do have some guys that have some experience. My biggest concern, if I'm a Steelers fan, is the health of TJ Watt, because when he's out there, they're a different team. And if his inability to stay healthy, because he is getting older, and it is football, and it is hard, and it is physical, and it is brutal, it is a sport of brutality, is the biggest thing. Now, am I going to say they're favorites over the Chiefs? No. But can they compete with almost everyone else in the AFC? I mean, you're seeing talent leave Miami, which obviously they struggled at the end of last year anyway. You're seeing talent leave Buffalo by a lot because of their cap situation, and they're choosing to take it on the chin this year in the hopes that they're going to have a lot of space next year, and some of these young guys that are coming up can fill in roles, and they'll know if they need to continue to draft and trust some of these young guys or sign, and they'll have money next year to do that. Other favorites in the AFC, we'll see what Cincinnati is with Burrow coming back theoretically this year, but T. Higgins on the block. So I think that Pittsburgh definitely becomes one of the best teams in the AFC with Russ, even if I don't even like Russ that much. Like, it's not like I'm like, oh, yeah, Russ is amazing. But, like, to Tony's point, I know he's a super Steelers fan, but it ain't like he's wrong either. All you need is, like, if he's a top 18 quarterback, and Russ threw for 26-8 last year. Like, don't turn the football over. Take advantage of your opportunities. And you can definitely count on another plus 500 season in Pittsburgh for Mike Tomlin. Taking more of your calls, 301-230-0980. A couple more smaller deals coming in. We'll get to those in what's trending. Denzel with us on the Hoffman Show. Denzel, what up?
What's going on, Craig?
What's up, bro?
I have two things for you really, really quick. First of all, the AFC North is going to be off the hook.
Yeah.
I mean, Russ could not have landed in a better place. I mean, that is all that Pittsburgh needed. He could not have landed, as far as organizational-wise, at that. He's in a great spot. And as far as Sutton going to Cleveland, the AFC North, he's opposite side of Amari Cooper. AFC North is going to be off the charts.
No, I totally agree.
My question to you is about our beloved team. Now, I got music to my ears this morning. T. Higgins wants out of Cincinnati. How far can we go, or how far do we go as far as giving up draft picks or whatever else we got to do to land T. Higgins here in Washington?
It's a good question. I'm not totally anti it depending on the draft pick. But the problem for acquiring T. Higgins is the same one that Cincinnati is facing, which is, how much money do we really want to spend at receiver? So they paid Tyler Boyd some in the previous years, and they're going to have to pay Jamar Chase like top of the market, insane receiver money, because Jamar Chase is that damn good. and they've already paid Joe Burrow. Now, Washington does have the luxury of going on a quarterback contract the next couple of years. And so if you say, like, you know what, we're going to make our guys' life a lot easier because we're going to actually spend real money on T. Higgins, and we think that him, McLaurin, and Dotson will make whatever we do at quarterback right, and it's only going to cost us a fourth to get him, I don't think that's the worst plan I've ever heard. But I would be very hesitant to give up much for T. Higgins, not because I don't think he's good, not because I don't think that he's worth the draft capital, but because the whole reason that he's available is because you need to sign him to a long-term deal anyway, or you need to sign him to a long-term deal in the first place, and a big money long-term deal. And because you've already paid Terry, and because theoretically Jahan is coming down the pike, I would avoid that. The one caveat I would say is, if you're Cliff and DQ and Adam Peters and you look at Jahan and you're like, we're going to let this guy play out his rookie deal because he's here, but we actually think he's way overdrafted and we're not going to pay him in a couple of years, we don't think he's actually a great fit for us, then maybe you sign T. Higgins and you don't worry about Dotson because he's a first rounder and he'll be here for a couple of more years, like, 3 more if you pick up the 5th-year option, 2 more if you don't, and then you're going to totally rebuild your receiver room in 2 years. I guess that's an option because I do think Higgins as your X and then moving Terry to the Z and Jahan in the slot is a possibility. But I also don't know that that's optimal either because I've got questions about Jahan in the slot. He's got the quickness, but does he have the physicality? So there's a lot of questions, I think, about these Commanders receivers. Like, I think they're good players. I think they could be great players. But how are they used in this offense? How does Cliff want to line them up? And I don't know that spending your resources on T. Higgins is the best overall team-building strategy. All right, when we get back here on the Hoffman Show, we will update you on even more of the news, take more of your calls. It's just a free agent frenzy today here on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Monitoring the chat there, also tweets at Craig Hoffman. There's actually some good, interesting questions on the YouTube stream, so I'm going to pop into those real quick and then get back to the phones at 301-230-0980. James says, not splashy signings, but familiar signings because they're ex-Cowboys, waiting to see who's next. I like our signings, says NHO isn't dead, 14. I like our signings, but kind of hoping we make more, and congrats, Antonio Gibson. Good luck in New England. Gibson, 3-year deal in New England, kinda. It's really a year-to-year type of bit. The first year is got most of the guaranteed money. A little bit of dead cap if they cut him after year 1. No dead cap if they cut him after year 2. So Gibson on to New England. And James circled back around at the end of some of these comments, said they'll probably draft running back instead of signing one in free agency. Probably. I mean, we'll see if they can get like a vet minimum deal for someone like Eckler, then I think you probably do that. I think that we have to think about this team in a couple of ways. One, we have to think about what holes do they have, this team, of course, being the Commanders. They need to fill the positions that they're shallow at, right? So DN was a huge one. Dorance Armstrong signing means that you're not dead in the water going into the year. Like if they go into the year with Dorance Armstrong, KJ Henry, James Smith-Williams, or Casey Toohill, Andre Jones, and a draft pick, either 36 or 40, that's a pretty solid room. Is it the best room ever? No. Do you have some super stud pass rusher, like if they could have convinced Bryce Huff to come here, who ultimately goes to Philadelphia? No. But you have a very good room, and that room also has your defensive tackles where you have made major investments, and those dudes better ball out because you're paying them to, / you've invested in them. Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne have gotten paid, and Big Phil, Fedarian Mathis, is a second-round pick. Those are the dudes you're counting on to have major production. So I think that is something to remember here as well, that if you get the edge players to complement those guys, then I think you're doing what you need to do, and there just might not be a stud edge rusher available to you where you draft and certainly in free agency. But if they go out and sign Danielle Hunter, like I'm all on board with that. Spend money ×2 at the edge position. I would love to see that. People commenting on Saquon. Yosef they're saying Saquon's best season was his rookie year, and NFL running backs age terribly. That signing is meh to me. I think they'll use him very well in Philadelphia. I think, obviously, that offensive line is going to take a step back with Kelsey retiring, but they just re-upped Landon Dickerson. Lane Johnson's still there. They've got a replacement center in-house who was playing left guard for them last year. And Mailata is still awesome at left tackle. And their screen game has always been exceptional, which means Saquon in space. So if you're counting on Saquon not being very good in Philadelphia, I think that your math is off. Is he going to be as explosive as he was as a rookie? No, because that's not how running backs age. But they also can get smarter and understand how to run routes a little bit better or use leverage a little bit better. And so I think that Saquon is a great signing for the Eagles to help Jalen Hurts get back on the track that he was on 2 years ago. Obviously, they need to revamp some things offensively as well. We'll see if Kellen Moore can do that. One guy that's still available, Mike Onwenu, is still available. The guard tackle from New England, played some right guard, played some right tackle. If Washington signs him, it feels to me like a tackle signing. I guess they could put him at left guard. And number 4 says, Onwenu felt like a really solid option for us with the positional versatility until the guard deal started coming in today. Is he likely priced out of what Washington is willing to pay now? I still am not convinced that these guard deals are quite as lucrative as certainly the headline number of 5 years, $100 million for Robert Hunt. He ain't getting 5 years, $100 million. Nobody gets 5 years. It's probably closer to 3 to 60, and how's that guaranteed money? And for that, if you're getting an elite player, it's probably worth it. He might be a little more expensive, but at the end of the day, like, Washington has money, and that's a position that I think they need to figure something out at. I don't know whether they're going to see it as a need, though. It depends on what they think of Andrew Wiley. would be my ultimate answer. Is he a left guard? Is he a right tackle? And what else do you feel like you need? I would much prefer at this point them spend money on a left tackle. I'd much rather see them pay 1 year of Tyron Smith, 1 year of David Bakhtiari, and then draft someone who can hopefully be your starter next year. But that's kind of where I see the offensive line status right now. And there's obviously a couple of other guys as well. Nick Arnold, shopping the bargain basement. Tyler Biadasz is garbage. Nick, you should pay attention more. Biadasz is not garbage. Biadasz had, amongst centers, the fourth lowest percent of pressures allowed last year. It's pretty freaking good.
The last couple years, he's been really good.
Yeah.
Not just 1 year, just the last couple years.
Yeah, but that stat was last year, and Anthony, I only have so many statistics in my head.
I apologize.
It's okay. But no, the larger point is he's been a starter on one of the best offensive lines in football for 4 years. I think that's good. That's just me. Let's see. Who else we got? One other name or one other position I think to watch is we had a couple questions about where do they go next. Some of the other positions to watch, I think, Anthony, one, wide receiver. I think that they will definitely draft a wide receiver or two. This draft is stupidly loaded with them, but I could definitely see them being like, no one's really making a move on these receivers. Let's see if we can sneak one in. And then linebacker. Jordan Brooks from Seattle is a guy who can play some Mike. I don't know if you want to save that to the draft because you really want a Mike with some experience. I would make a play for Bobby Wagner. That's just me. And I would think Bobby obviously knows Dan Quinn. I would think that that's a guy that he wants to play for. Now, he's never played on a team that's not on the West Coast. He loves it in Seattle and obviously went back there. His year with the Rams was a little hit or miss. But I do think DQ could maybe convince him hey, man, we need you. We'll pay you a lot of money for a year or two. You're going to come play with Jamin Davis. He's super fast. You're going to be like, hey, Jamin, you go. That's the guy who's going to get the ball. Go hit him. So you have a good tag team partner. So I think those are some of the positions to watch for me. Linebacker, because it feels like a position where you need a vet. Left tackle, position where you feel like you need a vet. You got your tight end already in Ertz. You can probably go to the draft there. And then you got one edge, but I would love another. So those are some of the positions I think I'm watching moving forward for Washington. Get more insight and analysis from Michael Phillips next. What does he make of, obviously, Washington's start to free agency? We'll get his thoughts on Kirk to Atlanta as well. Free agent frenzy all day long here on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And just after 5 o'clock on a day where NFL free agency is our top story, let's bring in our guy Michael Phillips to talk about it for today's Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
Miguel, ¿cómo estás on this Monday?
I'm feeling great. I'm in your town. I'm at the Entertainment Sports Arena. Never been over here before.
Oh.
Rolled into town early. We're doing the show live from the ACC tournament all week. So thought I'd come up, enjoy a little CAA basketball tonight. The basketball's fun.
Nice. I was going to say, what's at ESA? So you got the CAA tonight.
Semifinals, get a couple of games here. Get to see Charleston. They're the favorites. But Stony Brook prevailed in double overtime last night. We'll see if they can come through.
There you go. Southeastern Conference, or not Southeastern, Southern Conference, I believe, tournament final tonight here on the Team 980, by the way, booting us off with the air 15 minutes early at 7 o'clock. But, Michael, let's dive right into it. Let's get your reaction to the signings of Dorance, Armstrong, and Tyler Biadasz. That is how the Commanders start free agency, both what they did and what they haven't done yet as of 5:02 p.m. What's your reaction to the first couple of hours here for Dan Quinn and company?
Yeah, certainly. I know people are going to get PTSD to the Snyder days if I say spend big or, spend big to win. But I kind of thought there was a path to spending big today. And honestly, I thought the Eagles took it. Both of the Eagles' big signings I thought could have fit in here potentially with the amount of money and they have to spend and the needs. But you will not hear me say a bad word about Adam Peters, his strategy. He's building sustainable long-term winners. He's not spending at the top of the market. He's getting role guys at very demonstrated positions of need. Certainly nobody's going to fault them for grabbing a pass rusher. They don't have defensive ends, so getting one was very necessary. And you talk about center, that's the most important position on the offensive line for the quarterback, in terms of that communication and setting the line. Obviously, the left tackle protects his blind side. We all know that, but the quarterback's got his hands on the center's butt every play. They're communicating. They've got to have a good relationship. So no objections here to getting a veteran center, guy who's seen some things, guy with a high motor, good hustle. That can only help when you talk about potentially breaking in a rookie quarterback this year, or even giving Sam Howell year two. Both of those guys could benefit from a veteran center, Craig.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I kind of always looked at Ricky Schomburg, been like, that dude's got to be the starter because you spend a third-round pick on him. But I do think that for a younger quarterback, that veteran center becomes essential even. So I don't mind the move at all. And we'll see what Stromberg becomes, whether he competes at left guard or whether he's just kind of the interior line, number one backup guy at all three spots. For Armstrong, good signing, been more productive sack-wise than anybody that's been in Washington the past couple of years on a consistency front. Do you think that they need to continue to add in the veteran market there, or have they done enough if they re-sign James or Casey to be able to go to the draft, find someone, and proceed into training camp?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. You're talking about draft insurance right now, right? It's not, hey, this guy's going to anchor the line for the next 10 years. It's, look, we don't know what the board's going to look like at 36 and 40, right? Those first two picks on Friday, and I'm kind of jumping to conclusions here. Quarterback at number 2, you got 2 picks at the start of the second day on Friday. You're probably going to need an offensive line with one of those 2 picks. The other pick, if there's an edge guy there, I think that's your other demonstrated position of need. You'd love to grab one. Might not be one there. You hear that it's not a deep class in that regard this year, so you want to be ready. And this is, the rest of the week's about buying that insurance, getting enough guys. And I'm fine if it's James Smith-Williams. I'm fine if it's Casey Tuhill. Certainly both guys who would fit in well personality-wise with Dan Quinn. See no issues there, no obstacles there. But in terms of, how can you get yourself in a position where if the draft doesn't break your way, you're still good to field a team at that position, one of the most important positions on the field, because it's not a given right now. People sleep on, they lost basically everybody. It's KJ Henry and a pile of spare parts right now, so I don't think they're done yet.
Michael Phillips, of course, MP on the mic, 910 The Fan in Richmond, broadcasting live from the ACC tournament all week here in D.C. You can listen to it anytime, anywhere on the free Odyssey app, live, of course, 10 a.m. to noon. All right, so we just had another signing go down that I think is interesting for the Commanders. Gardner Minshew is going to Vegas. He'll have a chance to compete for the starting job there at quarterback. that his deal is like 12.5 for 2 years. It seems to be kind of the floor, I would think, for Jacoby Brissett now. What do you think does Washington, in your mind, need to do anything in the veteran quarterback market? Are they okay draft and Sam Howell?
Well, I've been very vocal, and I think most people don't agree with me on this, but I'm not backing down. That's, I've learned a thing or two in my 9 months doing radio, Craig. I don't think whoever they draft at number 2 should start week 1. I have major concerns about this offensive line. I think there's very demonstrated benefits to taking some time to acclimate. That doesn't mean you have to go full Patrick Mahomes and, Jordan Love and sit out an entire season. But I think there's very demonstrated benefits to not being thrown out there for 17 weeks with a team that I don't think is Super Bowl ready by any stretch. I think that necessitates the adding of a third quarterback. Now, is it a top-end guy? I'd love for Jacoby Brissett to come back. I like Jacoby Brissett. I don't know how open he is to that. I know he didn't have the world's best experience here in terms of what he felt he was promised and what was delivered on. So, I don't know if he's open to that. I will say this. He's not a veteran per se, but it sure feels like, and I'm not reporting, I'm just saying it sure feels like the Justin Fields trade market has come in a lot softer than people anticipated. Maybe the blockbuster's coming. But I think that's a very interesting domino that hasn't fallen yet.
I was going to ask you about that next because apparently the Raiders, even while signing Minshew, like the reporting is like 10 minutes apart. So maybe it was they're kicking the tires on Fields. Never mind Minshew. But like literally I saw like one report from a Raiders person 24 minutes ago and another 14 minutes ago on Twitter. So take that for what it's worth. But as the market is come down, teams are starting to kick the tires on Fields a little bit. My whole thing with Fields is I've never been interested because you're going to then have to pay him if you're right. But it does become more interesting of a proposition if he's, only going to cost you like a 6th rounder. Is there a price where you are like, yeah, come on in, Justin Fields?
Yeah, and I don't think he's great. So I go back to that being a good problem to have if he ends up being great. I think we've got a pretty big sample size on him. I think he's good. And I think this could be a place for him to, be either the top backup or a guy who starts for a couple of weeks while the new quarterback acclimates. And I don't think that would create a lot of tension. I think it'd be a good opportunity for him. I'm not sending anything of value, though, right? You talk about Adam Peters and building a sustainable winner, and obviously that's the most important thing right now is how do you build for 5, 6, 7 years down the road? If you hit on some of these draft picks you're about to make, how do you make sure you can afford them, still have the basics of roster construction? That obviously doesn't involve fifth-year options for Justin Fields and things of that nature. So I'm wary, but as the price keeps coming down, there's absolutely a point where I dip my toe in the pool.
All right, what has been your favorite signing of the day? Open question, and you can pick anybody.
Yeah, I think the Eagles won. Look, this is a team that I think believes it's still right on the verge of another Super Bowl appearance, and I think you've got to think that way no matter how this year went. You reload, and certainly the end of the year wasn't good, but you remember in Week 11, Week 12, this was a team that was every bit as good as the best teams in football. I think they spent accordingly. I love bringing in Saquon, a guy with a chip in the division. I love bringing in a great pass rusher who can get to the quarterback. I think they were your big winners today on the board as far as that goes. I'm intrigued by the Raiders. That's not an endorsement, Craig, of what the Raiders are doing, but they are flinging some money around, and if they have a plan, I'm missing it. It's the Al Davis way continues with Mark Davis is what I'm seeing there.
Yeah, it does feel a little scattered in Las Vegas. Who knows? I also know they love Jaden Daniels as much as you can possibly love a player in the draft. So
sure.
We'll see what ultimately happens at the quarterback position and, what trades they make there. Michael Phillips, MP on the mic, 910 The Fan in Richmond with us. Of course, spent a decade covering the Commanders for the Richmond Times-Dispatch and others this past year for the Washington Times as well, which means you covered lots of Kirk Cousins. What do you think of Kirk to Atlanta at that price, that structure, and what it means for the quarterback market and the Falcons specifically?
Nobody has played that game better in the history of the NFL than Kirk Cousins. The game, of course, being the contract game, not the actual football game. But, hey, boy, he is making bank. He's crossed $300 million in career earnings. I like it for Atlanta. I do think that's a team that massively underachieved in a division that is winnable and remains winnable. I'm fine with them pushing some chips in, going for Kirk Cousins. I have very real questions about how effective and how healthy he will be this year coming off of that injury at that point in the season. I don't think it's a given. He's out there week one at 100%. And I think that's an interesting wrinkle here as you talk about an Atlanta team that will have expectations this year and probably will have high expectations in that division. But in terms of just acquiring Kirk Cousins, I think you can do a lot worse if you're a team that isn't going to be able to take a quarterback in the draft than acquiring Kirk Cousins. It looks like, and I haven't seen the full contract yet, looks like a 2.5 years or so guaranteed.
Yeah.
Certainly, I would say that's a good deal for the Falcons and that it gives them a very reasonable out in a league where the salary cap keeps going up, and very reasonable for Kirk Cousins in that he continues to cash in.
All right, I'm going to throw a couple names at you to wrap up here. We're going to assume like market, maybe slightly above market value numbers for all of these guys. Would you want them, yes or no? Let's start off with one that's been reported as there's interest, and maybe this is just tying him back to his old coach, but Austin Eckler, who obviously played for Anthony Lynn, interested in Austin Eckler. I have interest in a running back, period. I know a lot of the big names did go off the board today in the end with Henry and I guess Jones in Green Bay is on the market now. But yep.
I do have interest in a running back. I think if you talk about making life easy for your number 2 overall pick, for your quarterback, there's a limited number of things you can do. You can't get him a great left tackle right now. You can't get him a star wide receiver right now. You can get him a good center. They did that today, a veteran center. And you can get him a running back who can get a tough yard to take that pressure off of the quarterback. So count me in for a running back. I don't think these guys are going to be top of the market spenders. When we get to safeties, I'll tell you the same thing. I don't think they're going to be day one, let's pay a lot of money for a safety players, but whoever falls through the cracks, I think could end up here and they'll take a good hard look at them.
Okay, so let me just get to it then. Justin Simmons was on my list. Justin Simmons, the Denver All-Pro safety.
Yeah, you're waiting on Price for that one, right? And I'm a little surprised he's not off the board already. They've got money to spend. That's the important thing to keep in mind is if they want to go get all-pro talent, it really won't hurt them all that much down the line, assuming you get the contract structured right. It looks like these guys are not going to do that, though, at least from what we've seen so far, that they're playing, upper middle class, so to speak, of NFL players. If Simmons falls to that level, they'll pounce.
All right, Tyron Smith, tackle from the Cowboys.
Great when healthy, right? How many guys do we say that about in the league? And, that's part of why I love grabbing the center today. I think he played 47 to 49 games in a row. Do I have that right?
I believe that is correct. I think you at least have the number of games missed correct. I think it's only been 2.
Two is the number of games missed, and that's obviously extremely impressive there. It's the opposite for Smith. But when you get him, you're getting a guy who can block. There's certainly, you put on the tape, you see some stuff that says, break the bank open, sign that guy. I trust Dan Quinn on this one, and I trust Adam Peters, right? We got 2 Cowboys guys coming over already. Fire up the memes, the Dallas Redskins, the Dallas Commanders, whatever you want to do. But in terms of, are you going to pay a lot of money for a guy who I think fairly you can only expect to play 50% of the games over the course of a season, that's a tougher decision. I'm glad I'm not the one making that decision.
I'm guessing your answer is basically copy-paste then for David Bakhtiari?
Yeah, and the fact that the Packers are letting him go, right? You always say this, right? If a guy gets to free agency at that position, what's going on here, right? Same with Smith, same with Bakhtiari. He made it to free agency, so why? Why is he in free agency? What are we doing here? Sometimes the answer is like with the Commanders, because they're dumb and they let a guy walk when they shouldn't have. Sometimes the answer is that's a pretty notable organization. I tread lightly there.
All right, that's Michael Phillips. You can catch more reaction. We'll see what happens tonight, and then he'll be talking about it starting at 10 a.m. tomorrow on 910 The Fan, which, of course, you can listen to live on the free Odyssey app. He'll also have Tales from ESA, where he's checking out some college hoops tonight and be getting you ready for the ACC tournament. Anything in particular you're really pumped about for the ACC tournament?
Man, I think the bracket broke really well in terms of getting some fun games out there. You're looking at a Friday night Clemson against UVA, which I think would be, or Thursday night Clemson against UVA, which I think would be a ton of fun. 2 teams that are, on the tournament bubble, 2 very different styles. I think it's going to be fun. Duke UNC, of course, was great over the weekend. I'm not betting against UNC. Armando Bacot, of course, who's in his 17th year of college eligibility. I'm not sure how it works anymore. But he very clearly wants to win one of these things before he leaves. I'm not betting against a motivated Tar Heels team.
All right, Michael Phillips got full coverage of all of that and all the free agency tomorrow on MP on the Mic. Thank you for your time, sir. Enjoy our lovely city. And if you're bored, hit me up because we're friends in real life.
Yes, sir. I'll look forward to that, and should be a great week. Take care.
Excellent. That is Michael Phillips with us here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back, more of your calls on NFL free agency. And then don't forget Logan Paulsen for a live edition of Take Command on the Radio coming up at 6 o'clock. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Logan Paulsen coming up at 6 p.m. to react to the signings of Tyler Biadasz and Dorance Armstrong, two Cowboys, now Commanders. Anthony, I know Grant was trying to workshop the new name. Like, we had the Commanthers for a while.
Yeah.
Are we the Command Boys now? He tried to go like Calmanders, and I was like, you somehow took the worst part of each name.
Yeah, I don't like that one.
No, that's terrible.
Yeah. The Command Boys isn't bad, though.
Yeah, that's way better than Calmanders.
Yeah.
It sounds like a Pokemon that didn't make the game.
Calmanthers.
No, is that someone who signed in Carolina, Washington, and Dallas?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I don't think of who that player would be. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if we have one yet.
We got a player who has now signed in Dallas, Cincinnati, and Tennessee. Chidobe Awuzie, former Cowboys corner, is on his way to the Titans. 3-year deal per ESPN's Jeremy Fowler. That's the biggest news, I would say, of the last 15, 20 minutes or so. Of course, keeping an eye on all of the deals. And I think for Washington, it's just a matter of making sure that you go into the draft without any major needs outside of starting quarterback, right? And even at that point, I agree with Michael Phillips, who just joined us. I agree that Washington should plan for not starting whoever they take second at quarterback, just in case that guy's not ready. You need someone else to be ready to play football for you to start 2024. And I know that's not sexy. I know week one of the new coach and the new GM and the new owner really, because last year it was taking the old guy's team. Like, all of that, you want to be like, here's our new, and you have the number 2 pick going out there. But I very much think that being prepared for that not to be the case is the right move. Now, I think you could make an argument that you're not going to find someone as a player who's a lot better as a backup than Sam Howell, especially if Sam takes to Cliff's system very well, which is possible because he played in a version of the air raid under Phil Longo at North Carolina. So if it all of a sudden clicks for him and he's killing it in practice, then maybe he is your guy to start the season until the rookie is ready, or just for the entire season, and then the rookie goes next year. But I tend to think that you want a vet in the room as a teammate in the ways that Jason Campbell, and for the reasons that Jason Campbell described on our show last week. And so the fact that none of these vets outside of Gardner Minshew have signed, I think is a good thing. Like, you haven't seen Tannehill, you haven't seen Brissett, you haven't seen Tyrod, you haven't seen any of these guys go anywhere. And I think, Anthony, I'm going to pull up the list of teams here real quick to double check ourselves. But it's not like those guys have a ton of options to go places to start. Like, there just aren't a lot of places where you're going to go, because I feel like most teams in the NFL have their starting quarterback or a place to get one.
Yeah, I mean, what you say you're pulling up the
yeah.
list
So let's
of,
go through it. I'll do this by division. Right? Bills, Allen, check. Dolphins, Tua, check. Jets, Rodgers, check. Patriots, number 3 pick. So could they bring back Jacoby? Could they go to Tannehill and be like, look, whoever we take at 3, we're pretty sure is not going to be ready. You're going to have at least a year of starting. They could, but there's one team. Baltimore, Lamar, Browns, Watson, Steelers just signed Russ, and they still have Pickett. Bengals, Burrow. Houston has CJ. Jacksonville's got Trevor Lawrence
and Mac.
The Colts, Anthony Richardson. So you could go there and be a backup with the idea that, hey, this guy has had injury issues in college and now is year 1 in the pros, but you're not going to go in as QB1. So there's like 0.5.
Yeah.
Tennessee, they're going to start Levis. So we're then the Chiefs, they've got a guy, I think, who's got it covered.
Yeah.
Vegas just signed Minshew, so you're not going to go and be another guy there, so they're out. The Broncos, they need to figure it out. So there's one spot. But they don't have any money. And then the Chargers, they've got Herbert. So that's one team plus New England in the whole AFC that you could legitimately go to and be like, I could be the starting quarterback. And maybe if you're Jacoby Brissett, you look at Denver and you go, I'm going to go there, and Sean Payton's really, really good at coaching offense and quarterbacks. I know we just traded Jerry Jeudy. I know we did all this stuff, but, like, I can run that offense. I can do that. But I don't know that Brissett is also, like, the guy that Sean Payton is looking for. So that's the AFC. Thoughts?
No, I would agree. Like, there's no opportunity for him to go over there. I think the Patriots, I think that's very interesting.
But they're the same situation as Washington.
Yeah, but he was just here last year.
Sure. It's a whole new crew. So maybe.
It is, yeah.
But the thing is, like, I would sell that if I like him and I'm Washington, I go, do you want to go to New England, which has maybe the worst offensive setup in the league? Like, they just re-signed Kendrick Bourne off the ACL, and, like, he's their number one guy.
Yeah.
You got Terry and Jahan here, who, by the way, you have very good connection with. Mm-hmm. So I would say Washington greater than sign New England, and they have more money. Actually, no, New England's got money.
Yeah, they got a little bit more.
They got a lot of money.
And they haven't made any splashes today.
Yeah.
Outside of Gibson.
We'll see. Cowboys, they've got Dak. Eagles, Hurts. Giants, I guess
Daniel
that's
Jones?
Yeah, but, like, I guess you could be, if you're Jacoby, you could be like, I'm going to beat that dude out.
Yeah.
You just want to know, like, is this an open competition? So that's the Giants. I'll put the Giants on the list. So that's two teams, the Giants and Denver. Commanders are in the same boat as New England. Lions, no, they've got Goff. Packers are set. Vikings need a quarterback. So that's a legit one. And if I'm a quarterback, I want to go to Minnesota. I want to go play with JJ. I want to go play under Kevin. They don't have as much space, but, like, they have enough. So Minnesota is probably the quarterback destination on the market.
Yeah.
So there's one of those guys. But also, do they go for someone a little bit younger? Do they go for, like, a Darnold versus a Jacoby? If I'm them, I'm going for Jacoby, and I'm trying to draft McCarthy.
Yeah.
But, okay, so there's one. The Bears, they're going to take Caleb. The Bucks just re-signed Baker. The Saints are going to roll with Carr. The Falcons just got Kirk. The Panthers are going to go with Bryce. And then, obviously, Purdy, Stafford, Geno, Kyler. There's the NFC West. So we got, what, 3 teams? Minnesota, Denver, and the Giants, who legit need a quarterback. Yeah. And the Giants are a maybe on that front because they did sign Jones last year, and it's the same front office and same coaching staff. So I'm gonna say Giants are on the list. So 2. And then if you're Washington, it's like, can you convince one of these vets to come and be your stopgap guy? Mm. And we'll see how this market shakes out. But Minshew, like, if you're telling me Jacoby 2 for 20, I'm probably not going to get it done. That 12.5 sucks.
You don't think 2 for 20?
Minshew got 2 for 25?
Ooh. Well, he also went out there and won him some money last year, though. Like, he was on the brink of the playoffs last year.
So,
not to say Jacoby didn't have a stellar season when he played, but
yeah, he did. And he was really good in Cleveland 2 years ago.
Yeah.
If I'm Jacoby, I'm like, put my tape on against Minshew's.
Yeah, that's fair.
So $15 million fully guaranteed is the number. That's from Pelissero. I would do that for 2 years.
Okay.
You tell me it's 2 for 30. First year, 1 for 15. Second year, like $5 million guaranteed to get it to $20 million total. And I can move on, take a dead cap hit next year, or he's my backup next year. But I, like, lock him in.
Yeah, I guess it's based on, like, the structure of the contract.
But, like, I'm paying him to be. That's if.
Yeah.
That's if you feel like you're paying him to be your starter this year.
Yeah.
I do that for Brissett. I wouldn't do that for, like, Tannehill.
And you said a couple of games he'd play? Or I guess until the rookie's ready?
Yeah.
Again, I don't want him to be out there like Bryce, taking unnecessary hits, trying to learn on the fly, like, if he ain't ready.
Yeah. I agree with that. All right, we have a Commander signing, and actually a semi-decent one. Tell you who it is next on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And
breaking news. Oh, snap, news is broken, breaking news.
The Commanders have a new starting linebacker, Frankie Luvu, 27-year-old, last played in Carolina for the Panthers, had 125 tackles and 5.5 sacks last year for Carolina. He is on his way to Washington per multiple reports. ESPN's Adam Schefter amongst them. It's a 3-year deal according to Schefter. He's already seeing some reaction, like Josh Norris, who's a guy who watches a lot of tape for Underdog Fantasy, says Frankie Luvu and Dan Quinn, Joe Witt's defense will be super fun. So Luvu last year, or since 2021, I should say, the 6th highest graded linebacker by PFF overall in the whole league. So this is a guy that's been good for a long time, and they get him on what I think, Anthony, is actually a pretty good deal. It's a maximum 3 years, $36 million. So we'll have to see what the structure is, but you're getting a really high caliber linebacker for $12 million a year. Like, that's not cheap, but like, that's the maximum. If he's hitting that means he's producing his butt off. So for a guy that's still in his prime at 27 years old, has a little bit of pass rush juice as a blitzer. He had 7 sacks 2 years ago, 5.5 last year, over 100 tackles each of those seasons. His 2 years as a starter, like, this is a good, productive signing. I don't know enough about his game, if I'm being honest, to know what, like, is he the perfect fit next to Jamin Davis? But clearly, this is a long-term piece, fast, physical player that Dan Quinn and Joe Witt have been looking for. Frankie Luvu on his way to Washington.
Yeah, I definitely like the signing, just because, again, if you're productive at that position, and a position that we desperately need production at, that's always going to, like, raise my eyebrow. But again, my biggest concern was more so just having a signal caller out there that's going to be able to, bring out the best in a Jamin Davis, that's going to be able to, command the defense and really be a voice out there. And I'm hoping he's our guy. Again, like you just said, I don't really know too much about this guy. It is ironic, though, that we do have another Commander coming up north. But I'm excited to see what he can bring. And I think Dan Quinn and company, they'll be able to get the best out of him, and hopefully he can get the best out of everybody that he's lined up next to.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, we say we don't have a lot of knowledge on him. And, Anthony, I'm going to need you to have an eye on the hotline here, because Anish Shroff, the play-by-play voice of the Carolina Panthers, is going to be calling us in just a moment to react to this news. So we're calling friends. Very excited to have our guy on. Of course, Anish Shroff, not only who you probably actually know as one of the great play-by-play voices of college football on ESPN, but is also on Sundays the radio play-by-play voice of the Carolina Panthers, and he is with us now. Anish, how are you, my friend, on free agency day?
Well, when you texted me about Frankie Luvu, I responded with the tear emoji.
Yes. Yes, you did.
You guys are getting a good one. You're getting a good one. You're getting a guy who plays with his hair on fire. He's basically been a human tempest. And with the start, really since the start of 2022, when they thrust him into a full-time role, he's taken off. He's been one of the most productive linebackers in the NFL.
So I guess this is a very functional question, and then I would love to hear more about him, like, at length. But what position does he actually play? He's a guy that when I was reading about some of the free agents, I feel like I saw some mixed stuff. Here, we've kind of been looking for that true Mike linebacker to play next to Jamin Davis at the will. Is he that, or is this a guy that maybe they're looking at Davis as this is the final year of his rookie deal? He's a replacement there. What functionally is he actually, do you think, in a modern NFL defense?
Versatile. The Panthers switched to a 3-4 last year, and Luvu's production didn't really drop off. He's a guy who can play inside. He can play outside. I would not describe him as a true Mike linebacker, but he does so many different things. He can get after the quarterback. He's solid in the run game. He can cover guys. I've seen him pick off a pass. He had a pick six a couple of years ago against Arizona. He can do so many things. And the one thing that I've always been impressed, about with Frankie Luvu is it just flies to the ball. You know, some guys have a knack of hunting the ball carrier. This is a guy, when you watch the games, he's always around the ball. He became a fan favorite in Carolina in a very short period of time.
Anish Shroff, play-by-play voice of the Carolina Panthers, is with us to react to the breaking news that the Commanders have agreed to terms. 3 years, $36 million is the max value of the deal, according to ESPN's Adam Schefter, on a deal with linebacker Frankie Luvu from the Panthers. I'm guessing you're also not shedding your tear emoji if it's not like a good human being. This, from everything you're describing, seems like a tremendous fit with Dan Quinn, hungry for the ball, fast, physical, finishes plays. Also, I'm guessing a very good dude. Do you have any favorite Frankie Luvu stories?
He was a guy who was one of the emotional leaders in this locker room, no doubt. You are getting not just a good human being, but they called him Use, and he was one of the locker room leaders. He was kind of the guy that people fed off of. I'd be lying if I said he's a guy that's easily replaceable in Carolina, especially given when you're coming off a 2-15 season. In a lot of ways, if Derek Brown was the anchor of that defensive line and arguably the best player, and Brian Burns was maybe the most notable guy on that defense as the edge rusher, Frankie Luvu in a lot of ways was the heart and soul of that defense. And this is coming not just from the coaching staff last year. This is coming from multiple coaching staffs. This is a guy who's a self-made player, undrafted free agent out of college, always playing like there's something to prove. I know that's a cliche. He was a bargain basement find when he came over from the Jets, and the first time they gave him really an opportunity to be a full-time starting player in this league, he ran with it. And again, I'm telling you, Washington is getting a good one. He is somebody that the fans are going to like. He plays with a lot of emotion. He plays with his hair on fire. We're losing a good one. You're getting a good one.
Yeah, I'm now just like, okay, when's the season start? I want to see this guy play. I'm pumped up. I'm ready to go. Real quick before we let you go, Anish, lots of money spent on one dude for the Carolina Panthers today. What do you make of the Robert Hunt signing down in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, two things. One, going into this offseason, the biggest goal was how can this offense better support Bryce Young? And one of the templates that the Panthers looked at is what the Saints had done with Drew Brees. And if you watch how New Orleans built their offensive line, they really emphasized guard to guard, guard, center, guard, not as much on the tackles. Panthers were strong at right tackle with Taylor Moton. I know Ike Ekwonu had a down season, but they're still high on him at left tackle. They had 15 starting left and right guards last season. They wanted to bolster the interior of that offensive line, give Bryce Young a deep pocket, time to throw. There were so many times where there was just pressure up the middle and Bryce Young didn't have a chance. So they spent $20 million a year to go get Robert Hunt to help solidify the interior of that offensive line, seeing that's what the Saints did when they had a smaller quarterback in Drew Brees.
Yeah, no, that makes it make a lot of sense. That was something we actually spent quite a bit of time on last year, kind of looking at that Saints model when Sam Howell was seen as a potential future here in Washington. Of course, now we're looking at the number 2 pick in the draft. Perhaps we'll have you back on a little later in the draft process. You lean on your college football bona fides for some of that, but appreciate you on extremely short notice that you can get your sads out and make everybody here happy about Frankie Luvu.
Yeah, you guys are going to like Frankie Luvu. Good human being, heck of a player. He's going to be a good fit on that defense. Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, you got it, man. Thank you. That's Anish Shroff with us, everybody, here on the Hoffman Show, the play-by-play voice of the Carolina Panthers, as well as, of course, college football on ESPN. Man, I'm fired up for Frankie Luvu now, Ant.
No, I am too.
Again, plays with his hair on fire, fast, physical, sounds like a Dan Quinn, Joe Witt kind of player to me. What do you think? And we'll get Logan's thoughts at 6 o'clock, but you next, 301-230-0980. The Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and we are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. You are definitely going to want to be with us live, not only today, but tomorrow as well. I mean, look, I want you to listen as often as you can, especially live, because that's my job, is to get you to listen. So I'll keep providing the good content. You keep coming where you are right now, but especially on the days where there is a lot of breaking news flowing. It's a little different than a lot of days where, check out the show on the podcast and, you get the takes, get the opinions, get all the analysis, and it is what it is from a time perspective. But on days like this, to have that instant reaction, this is where live radio is at its absolute best. So thanks for being along with us on the Team 980. Taking your calls now, reacting to the breaking news. Yes, I said breaking news.
Breaking news. Oh, snap, news is broken. Breaking news.
That the Commanders have agreed to terms with Frankie Luvu, linebacker from Carolina. Anish Shroff, play-by-play voice of the Panthers, just on with us, basically describing Dan Quinn's dream. Always around the ball, plays with his hair on fire. Love that. Your thoughts now, 301-230-0980 on the Team 980 listener line. DH, get us started, bro. What you got for us on Frankie Luvu and friends?
Hey, Craig, man. Look, man, I'm super excited, man. The chefs are in the kitchen cooking up a great meal for us. I think Luvu is going to be a nice addition to this newly retooled defense. And it's going to take on the characteristics of the D coordinator and the head coach, man. Very enthusiastic, very motivated, guys that are going to rush to get to the football, man. I love it. And I just think overall what they've done up until this point, instead of refilling, the holes from last year with quicksand, it feels like they're doing it with Quick Creek. You know what I'm saying? We got guys from a good programs that play well and that have a good reputation, guys that, can be around the ball, guys that can be leaders. And that's what we want, man. When you're trying to retool and get this roster in a good shape, it's going to take some of these type of signings, some of these key pieces to kind of get everybody back in place. And, of course, we just waiting for that final shoe to drop with our quarterback. But I feel like until then, man, keep building, man. Keep building. And I think they're doing a great job, and they're going to continue to do it throughout free agency, man. The fans got to sit back, relax, let the chefs cook in the kitchen.
They're cooking. Yep. DH, thanks for the call. I also love that they are getting, guys that, to me, the guys that they've signed are a very specific type of, person. Zach Ertz is so meticulous about taking care of his body, and, he was not, an inline blocker, toughness, tight end guy as a player. That's not a skill set. But, as a human being, he is tough. As a pro, he is exactly what you want. Biadasz is a no-nonsense kind of guy. I don't know as much about Dorance Armstrong, but he seems to fit the mold, and obviously he fits a position of need. So that might be more of a football thing, but I would guess that there's a reason that Dan Quinn wanted him here. And then for Luvu, yeah, he is someone who can do everything. I was just seeing a piece from Doug Farrar, who's covered the league for a long time, does a lot of X's and O's stuff. And he has a cut up on Luvu, and he's he can zone, he can man, he can zone match, he can put pressure on the quarterback. He is a modern do-it-all linebacker in the NFL. But he is also a guy who plays with his hair on fire. He finishes plays. He's always around the ball. These are the types of attitude players that Dan Quinn promised, that Adam Peters is now taking. And this to me is the thing, right? Because people are going to say, oh, this is DQ pulling the strings in that Adam Peters job. No. Dan Quinn's responsibility is to give Adam Peters characteristics and say, this is what I want. You go find him. And what you're seeing already, and sure, for Dorance Armstrong, DQ might have been I want Dorance Armstrong. Go get him. And Adam Peters is going to double check and be yep, nope, that's the kind of guy that we want. And he's going to go do it. But ultimately, DQ is we want guys that finish. We want guys that do this. We want guys that create turnovers. We want guys, whatever the characteristics are. And Adam Peters has shown so far, he's all right, that's what you want? Here's Frankie Luvu for you on a platter. This is how real teams do business. And the Washington Commanders are acting like a real team. Let's go to Cliff. Cliff, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, what's going on, Craig?
What up?
Luvu's a good signing, but I was wishing that Carolina would have franchised Luvu. That way we could have got Brian Burns. And like you were saying about Adam Peters, why wasn't he looking at Aziz Al-Shaair from the Texans, who formerly played with 49ers, who just had a big season this year?
Yeah,
and
I mean,
maybe they'll do something later on. I'll sit back and listen.
That's the thing. Free agency is almost 6 hours old. They still could. Like, they don't have linebackers. So that's a guy they could still pursue. Now, they probably won't. They probably now get their depth in the draft and with some of the guys that maybe were backups in the league last year or however they want to fill it out. But maybe they could if he's not too expensive. I will say there is a report, and have you seen the report on Brian Burns?
Whoa.
There are apparently ongoing trade discussions between the Giants and the Panthers about Burns. Yeah, so Burns might wind up in the NFC East after all, but it might be with the Giants. Burns is a guy that I would give up. Like, shoot, I'm not. Well, I don't know. Giving up the second you got in return for Sweat for Burns feels a little bit silly. But Burns is a better pass rusher, so maybe not. I would consider giving up 40 for Burns and paying him money. Because if all of a sudden you're looking at a front seven that includes Luvu, Davis, Burns, Payne, Allen, Armstrong.
Man, we're cooking with something, man. You got me hyped.
That's a front six you can work with. And then Quan down in the box is your seventh.
Are you expecting us to maintain the 4-3 kind of defense that we've had over the last couple of years? Because, again, okay.
I do. Now, is it going to be like I expect a 4-down base. I don't know what it looks like behind that. I don't know whether it's I don't expect a traditional 4-3. Is it a nickel? Is it like a more of a Buffalo nickel, like that safety down in the box? They play with 3 safeties like all the time in Dallas. Yeah. But I don't think I think Allen and Payne are best as a 3 and a 1 technique. Yeah. The 2 defensive tackle positions, one lining up between the center and the guard, one lining up between the guard and the tackle. And so unless you're going to put Allen as like a defensive or a 3-4 defensive end and Payne as a nose tackle, which I don't think either of them that's like a great position for them. Yeah. You've got to go 4 down.
I was just curious just because of Dan Quinn and how he had to adjust from, what he did in Seattle and what he did in Dallas based on like the personnel. So
yeah. I think the personnel is better 4-3 here.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I think they'll mix it up. There'll be definitely some different fronts that they mess around with here in Washington. Logan Paulsen can give his thoughts on all of this next. It is a live edition of Take Command on the Radio, if you will. And when we get back here on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And it is time now for something that we've frankly never really done before, quite like this anyway. It's Take Command Live on the radio. Logan Paulsen joining me. What's up? How are you?
Not much, man. Just trying to keep track of all this free agency stuff.
Excellent. Well, that's what we have you here for, is to have you talk about all the NFL free agency stuff, including, let's start reverse chronologically here, because as we sit here doing this, some people will hear this later on the Take Command feed. But as we sit here doing this, it is just after 6 o'clock, and the Commanders have just agreed to terms with former Panthers linebacker Frankie Luvu. He seems to be able to do a lot of different stuff, seems to be a play with your hair on fire, fast, physical kind of guy that Dan Quinn wants. What do you see when you watch Frankie Luvu?
Yeah, obviously he's a guy that you remember from earlier in the year, just having some ability to get some stuff done in terms of like rushing the passer from the edge, playing in the five-man front. I think the thing that sticks out to me most is that he's an aggressive down ball. I think he's got some coverage ability. Like I watched him in season and was like, oh my gosh, this guy can really roll. Like, let me make a note of that. So I'm really excited that he's here. And I just started watching his film, right before the call, because he was signed like 20 minutes ago or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But he's a guy that gets you excited, right? Like he's got some growth to do, obviously, but the flexibility you mentioned, I think the ability to rush the passer, the ability to do some coverage stuff, I think is very, very special. So, I think what I'm looking at, it's something that he fills a role. I think he's young. I think that's exciting. And I think he's a guy that, like you said, I think Daniel's going to have a pretty solid vision for. So.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the fast physical nature of who he is makes him a very obvious pick. My biggest question is, can he play Mike? Like, is this a guy that when you watch him on film, you're like, this is the guy that's going to play next to Jamin Davis? Or do you think this is a longer term vision type of thing where he's either playing alongside Jamin and someone else, or is he Jamin's replacement sooner rather than later?
I think that's a good question. I think he's got some, play middle linebacker, but I think like with anything, like with the draft and like with the agency, it's a little bit of projection. It's a little bit of a projection of this team. And I do think that he, like I said, he mentioned stuff that Dan, I think, really values a lot. Like he has the ability to kind of put his hand in the ground. Like if you watch Dallas tape last year, Anthony lined up a defensive end. And what they do there with those guys that are kind of in these flex rusher positions is they make it hard for the offensive line for known rushers. And so they did that a little bit last year with Kyle Van Noy. Anthony Barr obviously had like kind of a more of a flavor for it, playing defensive end in college. I think he a little bit of that. I also think, again, like that flexibility is awesome, but I think he could project to a guy who could play Mike linebacker. Like it's hard to tell exactly when you're watching Carolina. It's like he's a Will sometimes, he's the Sam sometimes, looks like he's the middle of three in other looks, but I don't think it's overwhelming for him. And so I think, like, again, you mentioned the ability, and a guy multiple things, been in a league for about 5 years now from the looks of the stuff on PFF. So again, I think, yes, he could project to somebody in the moves, and I think it's well that he's played multiple different spots because he obviously understands the defense in Carolina well enough to do those different things. And that's a very common defense specific to the types of fronts they play and the type of coverage structures. Not coverage structures, but they ask those linebackers to do a lot. So I feel very confident that he transferred very well to this year in Washington. It's just about kind of finding, the chemistry and who fits best where. But I do think he could potentially play Mike at some point, yeah.
So that obviously leads to a discussion of Dorance Armstrong and what role he plays. The first signing of the day, a guy that Dan Quinn is very familiar with. He played some inside, some outside, but is largely going to be a defensive end. I'm guessing you've watched a little bit of him. Obviously, you've studied him over the last couple of years in scouting Dallas twice a year when we were preparing for the podcast and the Commanders were about to play them. What do you like? What do you see as a role here for Dorance Armstrong?
Well, obviously, I think, the familiarity with Dan is something that I really appreciate. And also, I think the flexibility that he brings, like when you watch Dallas, I think he does so. He plays listed as a defensive end, but he also can rush over a guard and rush pretty effectively over the guard. He's listed at 255, and he plays bigger than that. He's got a better profile than that. So that's something that I enjoy watching when I watch him. I like guys that are physical. He's got a motor that won't quit, and I like the flexibility he gives you. Kind of remind of like a more seasoned, a better KJ Henry, a guy that, you know, maybe isn't going to wow you with like athletic measurables, or at least something that doesn't pop on. A guy that's just a football player, kind of has a role, understands what he does well, and understands what Dan wants. And so I think like that's super important in this time, is like making players and understand Dan's vision, or understand Witt's vision, excuse me, for the defense. And I think having voices that can echo that kind of, and when you watch film, he feels like a guy that's kind of a blue collar, hardworking type of guy. And again, the flexibility that he brings, I think, is going to be very important. I like that signing. I've always liked him, you know, as a kind of a rotational guy. It'll be interesting to see if he's kind of the starter coming in, or if they kind of embrace more of a rotational here. So to keep an eye on, but a guy that I've liked. I think he's a good football player, and I think he adds value again because he gives you some flexibility defensively.
So I think that my question now for the Commanders when it comes to defensive end is, are they done? Like, if they're done, are they okay? And I'm going to say done is they re-sign either James Smith-Williams or Casey Tuho, which, by the way, is by no means a guarantee. But I definitely think that can be done if they want it to, one of those two guys. And so let's say they were to enter the season with a draft pick, and I'm not going to necessarily say it has to be at 36 or 40, but I think there's certainly some guys, if folks have listened to the podcast or listened to our mock drafts that we played on the radio show, know that Darius Robinson, for instance, is a guy that we both really like. But if they were to have some kind of pass rush guy, Dorance Armstrong, one of JSW and Casey, and then KJ Henry and Andre Jones Jr. and the guys that are left over, is that enough, or should they still be in like the Danielle Hunter market, for instance, and some of these other pass rushers that are still available?
I mean, that's a good question. I don't think so. I don't think the Danielle Hunter market's still on the table. I think they should look to find someone else, right? I think I'd like you to have 9 guys that you feel pretty good about that are going to have a healthy competition for that position in camp. And so, yeah, is that re-signing? I think potentially. And I also think it's important to remember like Andre Jones and KJ Henry. And the thing that gets me excited this defense for this team is the coaching here, you know, has a precedent, has a history. You know, I've worked with Dan, and he does have a really good feel for developing young players and getting the most out of them. So I'm excited. And I think this year that, you know, it's a retooling year. I understand that. I don't think they're going to go all in this year. I think they're going to kind of lay the foundation with some guys like Armstrong that understand, that can kind of get the message across, can fill a role for you. But ultimately, I think they're going to still build. I think the building process is going to go out for a couple of years. So I don't think all the answers will happen this year. But I do think if some young guys develop, if they trust their coaching, if they trust the talent that they've acquired here, I think they'll be okay. But I wouldn't be surprised if they went out and signed another kind of Armstrong level free agent that had some upside. And again, you know, we talked about Luvu, if I'm saying his name correctly, and I think one of the things that he does so well is that he brings flexibility, a little bit of edge. I know you don't want him doing that full time, but there's another piece there that kind of into sprinkles in there. So maybe it's not, you know, what fans here are accustomed to, where it's Chase Young and Montez Sweat. It's a more diverse, eclectic approach, kind of maximizing individual skill sets and saying this is your role on the team, and therefore kind of making the sum of the parts better than the total better than the sum of the parts.
That's something that I think Keim has also started to mention, for instance, on his show, that like Jamin Davis is going to get some of that too. It's going to be in very limited doses, but the idea that the players that are here are going to do the things they've done before is not what we should be thinking at all. And so I think of taking that to the two guys that have been paid as well, in Daron Payne and John Allen. And I'd imagine that they mix and match a little bit, get it some outside. And, you know, could you see like some wacky pass rush set where it's like Armstrong and Payne on the edge with, you know, Luvu and Jamin like plugging the A-gaps up the middle on a third down, and you're doing something wacky. Like that kind of creativity is stuff we're going to have to start wrapping our mind around. Probably not that specific thing, but who knows? You know, the idea that you're going to see different stuff is going to become the norm here versus the very vanilla, hey, we drafted a bunch of talented dudes, let's line up and just hope that it works out, that I think we've seen the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think that's 100% right. I think that's what I'm excited to see. Like when you watch Dallas, one of the beautiful things about that defense is how innovative they are and how well coached they are across the defensive line. And Armstrong, like I said, I think is a good player, someone that I've liked for a long time, but he's not Montez Sweat, he's not Chase Young. And I think the defensive tackle there, number 97, again, a very talented guy, but he's not blowing the doors off anybody, right? But what they did a great job of is saying, this is our stud. This is the guy that we're going to kind of build the defense around, and Micah Parsons. And all these other guys, we're going to find what they do well. So like finding that Armstrong can rush a guard, has a great inside wiper, can make a guard move his feet and create pressure that way because he's got enough power. He's got enough strength. I think that stuff is going to be – you mentioned Casey, or Dre and KJ, like what do they do well and how can they maximize? I think about Casey, one of the things that I think has been often overlooked here in terms of his skill set, in terms of the previous coaching staff. He's tremendously athletic in terms of height, weight, speed, explosive measurements. So why don't we find a way to maximize that skill set? James can rush inside and outside. He would allow you to do kind of some of the stuff you're describing. Maybe we put Payne and Allen on their worst pass protectors, and then Armstrong and James get the poor matchups, or Andre gets the poor matchup, and then you get advantages that way. So I definitely think that I'm really excited to this group, and it makes me think it's less important that they go out and spend big money for agency. Obviously, good football players lead to good football teams, but there's also a dollars and cents element here that I think needs to be considered. So I'm excited to see these guys, the staff, and how they maximize the guys that they have here.
All right, offensive side of the ball, the one move they made so far today is Tyler Biadasz, center who spent the last bunch of years to start his career in Dallas. I've kind of said I thought that Ricky Stromberg being able to start was important this year because he was a third rounder last year. Like that is a pretty high draft capital pick, but realistically, I like this a lot because it's a veteran center to go with what you presume will be a rookie quarterback, and that changes the dynamic. And also, you're not going to hold the third-round pick made by the last group against this group. You got to maximize looking forward. It doesn't matter in terms of looking back. So that's kind of where I'm at on Biadasz. I think he seems to be a very good fit here. He's had a lot of success in Dallas. He seems to be a no-nonsense guy from what I can gather from friends that I have down there. Physical, sentimentality, got some training camp scuffles, like kind of fits the toughness mold of what you want. What do you see when you watch Tyler Biadasz on tape and what you make of the signing overall?
Yeah, so I haven't watched Tyler yet. I'm totally candid again, but I do think it makes me better about going into the draft, and just kind of having that piece off the board, so to speak. You've got Ellie, you've got Cosme, you've got the center kind of taken care of, maybe a young player at guard, Chris Paul, whoever it is there. We'll see what, obviously, they'll make some more moves there to kind of shore that up. But it kind of is like one piece that you don't have to worry about quite so much. Now you can kind of focus on that left tackle position, the left guard position, and just making sure you get your best five on the field. And again, this is a group I also think they probably make a couple more signings in terms of free agency. It might not be first, third wave, draft, whatever that is. But I definitely look for them to kind of stockpile some stuff here. And again, we've talked about this on previous shows. I think it's fantastic that there is such great O-line depth, especially in the top 75, 80 picks in the draft. So I think they'll have an opportunity to do a lot of damage in terms of shoring stuff up there. But I'm really happy that they've played consistent football. And again, people say, "Oh, well, what about Bates?" Bates was a different situation. He was kind of, rotating. He was their swing guy, and you were kind of projecting him to a starting role. Yeah, Gates. Did I say Bates? Sorry, Gates. That's exactly right. So, and you were kind of projecting him to a starting role. Here, this guy's done it. 1,000 year. He's been in that. He's been in the trenches. He's done that kind of stuff. So, I think it's someone you can feel much more confident about.
It also seems like, again, an attitude play, and that's the thing I like about all of these guys. I don't know Armstrong on that personality side as well, but, the first thing I got back in a text from one of my buddies who works in Dallas about Biadasz is like, yeah, he's a scrappy guy. He doesn't really mess around with the media as an offensive lineman. He just wants to go out and play. And like that dude and Sam Cosme are going to become best friends. Not that Sam's bad with the media, but like they just want to play ball. And they want to scrap it out, and like they have a toughness about them. And then we have Anish Shroff, who's the play-by-play voice of the Panthers, on talking about Luvu, and he's like, Derek Brown was the best player, Brian Burns is probably the most touted player and is awesome, but Luvu was the heart and soul of that defense. And so I think you add that to like Zach Ertz, and again, we hear Peters at his press conference talk about character and Quinn talk about character. They've really backed that up with the guys they've signed, as well as signing players at position of need, because at the end of the day, they do have to line up and play somewhere.
Yeah, and I think like if you look at what happened in 2017 with San Francisco, referencing Adam's experience here, I think they did something very similar. They weren't going out and trying to get the most expensive or the most talented guys. They wanted cultural pieces. And I think like you alluded to there, like that's essentially what they're doing here. Like Luvu, when you watch him on film, like he plays like a lunatic. Like, and I love it. He's physical. He's, not always in the right spot. Like people make mistakes. He's not a perfect player, but the energy, the toughness, the physicality he brings, the flexibility of the defense he brings. I mentioned this with Armstrong. Like I was watching his kind of his key plays as a pass rusher, and he is relentless, man. He's getting pushed down. He's crawling to the quarterback. He's doing whatever it takes, and he has a lot of sacks where he's kind of sticking with the play longer than the tackle and makes the play. And I think there is value to getting guys like that in the building, guys that are going to set your standard at a very high level. And kind of again, this is the foundation year. Everyone retool, whatever you want to call it, right? This is the foundation year. So make sure you and they might not be here long-term, but you want guys in year one that say, this is how we do things as a commander. This is what Dan wants us to do. And I think it's great that they've got three guys, that just like from 1,000-foot view, obviously we're going to watch more. We're going to talk about these guys more later, but like from 1,000-foot view, from the 50 plays I've watched of each of them, I'm just like, I'm excited, and again, from the reputation stuff that you've been able to gather, like, it's going to be a really cool opportunity for this team. And I think it's the right approach.
We'll, of course, do a full podcast with full film breakdowns, all these guys, and kind of have a more comprehensive view once the full free agent class is in later this week on Take Command. But for now, that'll do for the Commanders portion of this Take Command live on the Hoffman Show. Real quick, though, Logan, before we let you go, thoughts on some of the other big free agent moves, starting with Kirk Cousins to Atlanta. Big money, 4 years, 180, 100 of it's guaranteed. To me, this vaunts them immediately to the top of the NFC South. I love the fit. Kirk finally reunited with some of the Washington folks after the years of rumors of Kyle and Sean wanting him to come to San Francisco and L.A. Raheem Morris, the guy who gets him. What do you make of the fit down there, and just how good can Atlanta be if Kirk is, let's say 85% of what he was last year coming off the Achilles?
I mean, 85%, that's good enough to win the division down there. Like you said, I'm really excited. First off, congratulations to Kirk. Like, awesome guy, works his tail off, is in the position to make this kind of money and do these things financially for him and his family. So fantastic job by him. And again, like you look at the skill players down there, Bijan Robinson, Pitts, and they're going to be able to probably draft one of those big. You think they can draft a big receiver at 8? I mean, golly, it would be pretty if neighbors who are. Brock Bowers takes a little bit of a slide there, and you just get another offensive playmaker for him to kind of mess around with there would be pretty fantastic. And, the way he was last year was 10 player at the position. So I think it's fantastic for Atlanta. Really excited for Kirk, and it's always good when you see good guys or good by understanding and by my relationship to him get rewarded. So that's awesome.
In the division for the Commanders, NFC East, Eagles sign Barkley. They also get Bryce Huff. What do you make of what they have been able to do?
It's interesting. Like, I think, Philly to me was for a long time kind of the gold standard of how to flip a franchise and like rebuild. And right now, one of the things that if I was going to be critical of Philly, and, if you're a Philly fan, please call in and talk to Craig about it. But the thing I've noticed is that they are really willing to spend a ton of money, and I don't necessarily always see the identity of the organization. Saquon Barkley thing's really interesting. I think getting him in the backfield, on paper with Jalen Hurts is really interesting, but like, you're investing a lot in a running back, and you've been able to be very successful just kind of trotting whoever you want in there for the last couple of years, right? Obviously, edge rusher is extremely important. Bryce is a football player, heck of a pass rusher, but how does he fit with your vision, especially with like Fletcher Cox kind of moving on? Like you've always kind of been a power rushing team, and now you've got, Nolan Smith from Georgia, you've got Hassan Reddick, and now Bryce Huff, who are a little bit more squirrely on the edges. Does that affect how you kind of coach and develop the potential excellent football player? Like he's probably my number one kind of under the radar free agent in this class outside of Danielle Hunter. You know what I'm saying? Like, really excited for that. But again, that's one thing that I'm always kind of questioning with them in terms of free agency. I think they do such a good job in the draft, but free agent wise, like, does this fit who you want to be offensively? And I think only time will tell.
Yeah, definitely. They also definitely wanted Xavier McKinney, the safety from New York. He gets out of town, winds up in Green Bay. They've had an interesting day signing Josh Jacobs, letting go of Aaron Jones. Also let go of David Bakhtiari. The one position, I guess I will do one more Commanders thing real quick. I would love to see them sign one of these veteran tackles, take a flyer on them. Tyron Smith, Bakhtiari, anybody else that's become available, any of those guys particularly interesting to you for Washington?
Yeah, I think they're all very interesting, and I think there's been a precedent set recently of kind of older guys going to new locations. Armstrong, Peters, Whitworth, all these played for a long time that have been relatively successful. You know, and obviously with Armstrong, like, you're negotiating injuries all the time. He's got to miss 3 a year. I think it's with Tyron Smith, but does he make your team better on those other 13, 14 games to kind of offset some of that? I would probably argue yes, you know, and I think if they've got a great, you know, strength staff over there in Washington, maybe they can help him kind of get right and figure out kind of how help manage loads a little bit better. So I'd love that. I think the other guy that's interesting is Jonah, and he's a little bit up and down, but I think the price point would probably be better, you know, in terms of like what you're expecting. He's also 26 years old. So those types of guys, if you can get and again, I think with kind of their vision, if you can get kind of I hate to say bargain bin, but like a second tier free agent and a guy that fits your offensive vision, I think that would be special. I would love, to your point, I'd love for them to find one of those guys. And I don't want to give you a name because I think that they've done such a good job of kind of saying, this is who a commander is, someone who fits Adam Peters, Dan Quinn's vision. So until that kind of all gets worked out, like I'm kind of excited to see what they do with that spot, you know, because I think it's going to be these guys that I just like kind of like little diamonds in the rough, which is always exciting.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you can get a tackle, you are now at the point where you don't need anything in the draft. You can upgrade at a bunch of positions, almost all of them, in fact, but you no longer we can't field a roster if you can get a tackle. That's the one position where you still kind of have that, in my opinion. I literally don't know who their starting left tackle would be if the season started tomorrow. And so I do think that that's something where if they need to get one of those guys, and whether it's Jonah Williams, like you said, a little bit younger option, whether it's Tyron Smith, whether it's David Bakhtiari, you got to get one of them, and then you also attack it in the draft. This is an and, not or situation. All right, that's our first ever true Take Command live on the Hoffman Show. If you want to listen back to any of it because you missed any part of it here live on the Team 980, just go to the Take Command podcast feed in a little bit. Our producer William will have it up there. Anthony's going to podcast it on the Hoffman Show feed. It's everywhere. There's no excuses for not listening to every second of this conversation. Logan, talk to you later in the week, buddy. Thank you.
Appreciate it, bud.
All right, that is Logan Paulsen with us here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back, it's actually our final segment. We'll wrap it up with real things, real people said into real microphones. What's a little more breaking news before we get out of here? It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app.
Breaking news.
Oh, come on.
Breaking news. News is broken. Breaking news.
Multiple reports, NFL Network, ESPN, etc. The Giants have traded for Brian Burns.
Oh, my gosh.
ESPN's Adam Schefter on SportsCenter now talking about this. Panthers trade Brian Burns to the Giants, the pass rusher who I very much wanted here in Washington. Alas, that is not going to happen. But let's see. And have you seen any compensation yet? This is where live radio gets very, very fun.
My heart was just broken, Craig.
You wanted him here too?
I did.
It's going to be okay, Anthony.
Thank you, sir.
You don't have to give up any draft capital, so that's good.
Oh my gosh.
Dun, 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 dun.
Hold on. Yeah, it just came out. 5 years, $150 million max, with 87.5 guaranteed. Oh my gosh!
And they gave up a second and a fifth.
Yes.
That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. Here's like this is the problem for Washington, with having paid Allen and Payne. It's like you can't really afford to do that. If you had only paid one of them, you can afford to do that. You pay both of them, you can't. So now the Giants, who chose the alternate path, right? They had Dexter Lawrence, they had Leonard Williams. They get rid of Williams, even though he's really good.
Mm-hmm.
They make that tough decision, and now their bookends are Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau.
Crazy. And you got Sexy Dexy in the middle.
Washington, you need a tackle!
This is giving early 2010s New York Giants football. Or really late 2000s where they had Justin Tuck.
Strahan, OC.
Yeah, they just had too much.
Anthony, I'm just really happy because that yell I just let out, that little bit I just did, I couldn't have done that a week ago. My voice was trash.
Yeah.
So that's nice. That's excellent.
Gosh. We're in trouble.
I mean, yes and no. Yes and no. I mean, the free agency's not over yet. The draft isn't.
You're right.
Isn't over yet.
You're right.
It's funny because like right now, the graphic on SportsCenter, they've now moved on. Derrick Henry remains available in free agency, as if free agency is over. It's like it started 6 hours ago.
I know, but everybody just expected all these splash plays back to back to back to back to back to back, and we've gotten some.
You've definitely gotten some. I do think the Justin Fields thing is perhaps the most interesting thing to watch going into day two. Like, does anybody do anything interesting at the quarterback position? Really, Kirk, Russ signings; those are the big ones, and then Gardner Minshew is the only tier 2 quarterback to have things go in day two. All right, in day one, 2 years, $25 million, roughly $15 million guaranteed to go to the Raiders. Any other deals break in the last 20 minutes while Logan was on?
Zadarius Smith, he re-signed to stay in Cleveland. He got a 2-year, $23.5 million deal.
Okay, that's another pass rusher off the board. That kind of stinks.
Yeah. Outside of that, nothing crazy. I mean, some smaller deals, but I think Zadarius was the biggest one that I saw.
Okay. I mean, Joe Person, who's again, seems like a fake name. It's not. He's a real person. Joe Person covers the Panthers for The Athletic. This great reminder on Brian Burns. A second and a fifth, 16 months after the Panthers turned down 2 firsts and a second from the Rams for their Pro Bowl edge rusher. They could have had 2 firsts and a second, and they got a second and a fifth. But hey, Anthony, at least they, that's not fair because the value that he got last season to help them. Imagine what their record would have been without him.
Yeah,
would they have gone 0-17, 1-16?
I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. At 1 year, is it worth all? No, just a horrendous job managing a football team. Good gracious. So bad. So bad. More on Luvu. Ben Standing reporting that the deal is a $31 million base, $36 million max. So just over 10 a year for Luvu in terms of what the cap hit will probably be. But yeah, Burns to the Giants. Eagles, of course, got Barkley earlier in the day. Raiders free agent Jermaine Eluemunor. I'm definitely destroying that name. He is a guard, and he is now with the Giants. 2 years, $14 million. Let's see. Chidobe Awuzie, 3 years, $36 million, $23 guaranteed. He follows Brian Callahan to Tennessee. And let's see. Also, the Lions made a trade. They get Carlton Davis, a 2024 sixth and 2025 sixth for the 2024 third from Detroit, from Tampa. So there you go. 49ers also tendered Jawan Jennings, who was just a big player for them in their run to the Super Bowl. So that's the state of play as we sit here at 6:39 on a Monday, free agency Monday. And the best part is, Ant, we get to do this all again tomorrow. What we get to do right now is a little thing we like to call Real Things Real People Said into Real Microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5-11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
Anthony, I'm not going to lie. I wasn't looking at you until the very end there, but I'm guessing the number on the screen is the out time.
Yes, sir.
Okay, excellent.
Hold up. Is it 42:15?
It is. Okay.
All right, just making sure.
Which means we've got less than 2 minutes left in the show, which means we have to start with this one. Just incredible. I've been to a lot of press conferences, never one like this. Utah State head coach Kayla Ard fielding questions after they were knocked out of the Mountain West tournament. And, talk about an awkward turtle.
And how do you plan to rebuild for next season?
I'm not going to be rebuilding. I just coached my last game at Utah State. I spoke with Diana, and they're going in a different direction, and I respect her decision, and I hope they get a really good coach in. I'm assuming that's going to be the last question. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
All. Thank you, Coach.
I'm also going to guess that the the Mountain, whatever that was, lower conference women's basketball tournament was not super attended, especially a team that just fired their coach, like early round games. Probably not the most attended press conference that's ever existed. I've been in plenty of those. And, if you're like one of 3 people in that room as a reporter, what do you just stand there and you go, oh. Also, why did they let her have a press conference?
That's messed up, but yeah, they set her up.
That's I guess she's got to do one, but fire her after the press conference. I guess then it's like you get asked those questions and it's like, well, why'd you let her answer the questions? Just do it before. But I think the point is you either do it after the press conference or you do it before and then she doesn't have to. I don't know. Super awkward. Anyway, that's our show for today. Back with more free agency coverage tomorrow